Men's physique, classic physique, open bodybuilding. The opportunities are endless. The choice can be daunting, and the lines between the classes are ever more blurry. So today, I'm going to make a video as part of the Stage Ready series to help you decide what class or division is right for you. Let's get into it. Let's start off with a little bit of context. To decide which division is right for you, you're going to need to know what each division entails and what is the focus of that class. So let's roll into it in reverse size order, starting with men's physique. Now, yes, I know what a lot of you are saying is that men's physique might not in fact be the smallest category. A lot has changed since its inception, back in the days where somebody like Ryan Terry would have stolen any show. But the truth still remains that in men's physique, proportions are truly king. The ideal here is to have a small waist and a large developed upper shelf. So you want to be as wide as possible in the upper body, with having a small waist so that everything tapers down into a V taper. Legs, of course, not on the priority list, although calves do help and they are beneficial as they can sometimes be brought into the equation. Of course, with men's physique, there is no real posing. Presentation is still important and you have to learn the little hand flaily things before you... Oh no, you can't put your hands up. I forgot. Clearly it's not the right division for me, is it? But for the most part, men's physique is pretty much just a front relaxed, side relaxed, rear relaxed. That's all you have to do. So for a lot of people who lack some confidence, it might be the right choice. Moving on and moving up, we're talking classic physique. What do you need for classic physique? Well, again, proportions are king, but mass is definitely a close second on that one. Look, for this, you are going to want to be bigger than a men's physique competitor. Although men's physique competitors can run quite large, it's not the norm. In a local competition, your classic guys are probably going to be slightly bigger. A small waist is still on the priority list. Look, we're still looking for that aesthetic taper, but this time it's going to be an X taper because we're taking the legs into account. So you want to think of the upper body going like a V, like a Dorito, and you want to think of the lower body going pretty much like a V, but the pyramid. Yeah, so an X overall. And legs are super crucial in this, guys. Like, you're going to need those legs to be proportional with the upper body, and everything really needs to be developed. Now, posing, onto the fun part. Posing is really critical in classic. Classic is all about the Arnold era where presentation was judged, where, you've got these guys who are hitting really unique artistic poses. This is what classic was born out of. And although it might not always ring true that the best presenter will, fill up in ranks, the truth still remains that this is what it was founded upon. It will give you the best chance of success. And the guys who do learn this stuff and do have an affinity for posing tend to have more success. Now we're hitting the big leagues, men's open, the exciting stuff. For all us proper bodybuilders out there anyway. With men's open, we're going to flip physique on its head. Mass is very much first. It is foremost and prominent. If you are a big old boy, this is the class for you. Of course, classic physique has a weight cap. You need to pay attention to this. This will be important about whether you can even consider it. But men's open, nah. We've all seen Big Ramy. We know what they're capable of. However, in theory, proportions do matter in men's open. And you can't get away with being too unaesthetic or else you simply won't be allowed to win a show. These are the politics of bodybuilding, but the positive side of the politics. You're going to want to match that X taper from classic physique, but of course the small waist is a bit more flexible and the definition of small when we're talking this size game is pretty fluid. Now, we want to bear in mind development. So if classic, you need to be a bit bigger than men's physique. Men's open, you need to be fairly significantly bigger than both of them. The likelihood is if you're choosing between these classes, you're choosing between men's physique and classic or classic and open. And that's something we'll delve into shortly. But if you're thinking about men's physique and open, then you're probably better off in men's physique. These guys hit up to 250 pounds plus, and in the off season reach heights of 300 pounds no matter the height. So you do need to bear this in mind and realise that long term, are you willing to go that far? That will be a major determining factor. So speaking of those classes you might be deciding between, let's kick it off with men's physique versus classic. These two classes can be difficult to distinguish between at times, but let's face it, the key is in the legs. Are you confident enough to pose and present that physique in a more artistic way? That will be an important deciding factor here, and this is something which made me really lean towards classic because, like some of you out there, the posing side of bodybuilding, it's half of what makes it for me, and I want to be able to present my physique in a way that might even sway something to my advantage, allows me to present the best version of myself. So do you actually want to be able to present your physique? That might be a factor. Some people love the men's physique posing. They think it's simple, it's straightforward, and it's fine, it looks good, and you can do little things anyway to fancy it up. But personally, not so much. Are your legs proportional to the upper body? You might have good legs, but do they work in proportion? This is going to be a factor because classic physique is all about the ratios. Do you get anywhere close to the classic physique weight cap? If you don't, I would strongly suggest men's physique. I ended my off-season 10 pounds above my maximum stage weight. That's nothing. And I got fluffy, trust me. I'll put the video up again, but God knows why. Arguably, I am underdeveloped for a first show in classic physique. So if you want a point of reference, I would probably be perfect for a men's physique first show. A lot of this is going to be preference-based. It's not fact-based, and that is because the lines are so blurry. Men's physique guys are getting bigger and bigger as there isn't actually a weight cap, which is counterintuitive for the class's sort of ambitions, whereas classic physique does. However, if somebody showed up at the classic physique weight cap for men's physique, they'd have to have an incredibly aesthetic physique or something that just looks beach bod, not so much, classic era bodybuilder, to be really allowed to go forward in that. We've seen that there was some pushback from another federation recently on this issue, and I'm sure that kind of stuff will leak through at some point. Moving swiftly on to classic physique versus open. There are two factors in my eyes to this decision. One is emotional, one is factual. Let's talk the emotional first. What do you want the most? Do you want to be the freak? Do you want to be the monster? Or would you prefer to walk that line of normality, flirt with the concept of being like a normal person and focus a bit more on the aesthetics? Now, I will caveat that both are completely outside of the realms of normality in terms of size. However, classic is that little bit more socially acceptable. The way I'd like to put this is, are you inspired by Arnold or are you inspired by Jay Cutler or Ronnie? This will decide the emotional play as to which one's best for you. But you can't have the emotional or the preference if you don't have the factual. Which can you compete in? Question number 1. Can you perform an aesthetic vacuum? This might seem trivial, but this is actually a guideline part of posing. For the Ep.4 in Classic Physique with 2 Bros Pro, for example, so I presume with the IFBB Pro League in general, you have to actually pull a vacuum before you get into the Ep.4 position. So you have to be able to at least execute one to a decent standard. You don't have to vacuum in every pose, but you will have to sometimes. Would you describe your physique as bubbly, or would you describe it as blocky? You've got to be honest with yourself here and understand which your muscle looks most akin to. Blocky is not a problem. I personally think that Nick Walker's physique is incredible, but it is just sheer mass. It doesn't have the same kind of flow that a Phil Heath does or somebody like Chris Bumstead. But let's face it, it's impressive, and clearly proportions were thought of during the process. It's just his natural type of physique, how the muscle grows. Is your waist closer to Potvin or Phil Heath? This guy, incredibly aesthetic, crazy waist. I've never seen anything like it. This guy, we'll left that unsaid. We don't want any hate. Brilliant bodybuilder, amazing bodybuilder, one of the greatest of all time, but let's face it, there's one thing plaguing that physique. But he's still able to be relatively successful and come in third at the Mr. Olympia. Can you invest the time, and do you have a real passion for presentation? Classic, I feel, has more of a focus on the presentation, the posing, the art form side of bodybuilding. Can you invest more time in terms of analysing to a much more scrupulous detail your proportions and your presentation? It seems like classic guys spend a lot more time in the posing room, and although in Men's Open, of course, this is very important and give you a great advantage, it just isn't mandatory and it's not part of the judging process as much as it might have an influence over the classic process. Although these are guidelines and some aspects are incredibly crucial, like the waist issue, The choice is still ultimately yours. If you have a passion for classic bodybuilding, you should compete in classic bodybuilding. If you want to be a freak with no weight cap and be able to push your body to the absolute limit, you want people to stop and stare in the street, then you need to be an open bodybuilder, because a weight cap might just be a bit boring. It is worth noting one caveat here, and that is between the classic division and the open division. And this is really important for a lot of guys who don't understand why maybe they'll be told that their physique does not suit classic. You can be successful and have an aesthetic focused physique in bodybuilding. You cannot be successful having a mass focused aesthetic second physique in classic. The better guy with the better proportions will always beat you in classic. In open bodybuilding, everyone's got a chance. Look at Wesley Vissers. In my opinion, an amazing bodybuilder with some insane proportions, but his physique does not flow quite right. It's a look they're looking for, and there are certain aspects which really decide this, which almost make no sense. He has a small waist, he has a great vacuum, some people would say maybe blocky. His lats flare beautifully. His upper body is incredible, his lower body is great. However, his physique does not have the flow that they're looking for in classic. Right now, these things can change. Look at men's physique. There are so many other important parts of this. For example, picking the right coach. And that's why next week's video is going to be focused on that. And it will be a little bit longer because this is a much tougher decision and there are way more variables. It's also important to know when's right to compete and how much a competition realistically costs. Go check out episodes 1 and 2, they'll be linked here. And subscribe to be notified when every Stage Ready drops, because this information, I hope, will help you along your journey and to make some really crucial decisions to ensure your success in the sport.